In our next forecasting video, we're going to be looking at specifically flipping projects. Now, this is a similar forecasting sheet to the buy, refurbish, refinance model. But in a view to keep everything simple, what we've done on this particular forecast is strip out the elements that are more specific to the buy, refurbish, refinance model. Things like rental income and any additional really cells that are going to overcomplicate the actual flip process. Now, it's personal choice. You can use whichever forecasting sheet you want to do. Personally, I prefer to use this one when we're just assessing it from a flip point of view, because there will be occasions when in our own business we're assessing projects and we only really want to be looking at it from a flip point of view. It might not be suitable as a mainstream buy-to-let because the yields just aren't good enough. It could be a great location, it could be a great homeowner property and a very good price and a very good end value sale price as well, but the yields might just be too low for us to consider buying and holding. And we don't want to overcomplicate it and spend too long forecasting figures on a deal where it's not going to be part of our overall decision-making process. So we try to keep these cells and spreadsheets very simple when it comes to assessing deals, so you can do them quickly and that you can really assess each project, maybe even before viewing stage, certainly after viewing stage, quickly on a kind of an apples to apples basis. Okay, so forecasting flips. Again, if this is the very first forecasting sheet you've looked at, I'd recommend to go back to the buy-to-let one. That just gives you some extra context on how the sheet looks, is made up, what sort of things we're really going to be focusing on, what this sheet here, SDLT, means, what these figures kind of mean, effectively looking at stamp duty, land tax, but we cover all of that in the buy-to-let forecasting video. So it makes sense to go over that first if you've not done already, and then pick it up here when you're ready to go through specifically the nuances of a flip project. So in this example, we're going to be focusing on a possible case scenario mainly. We're going to be looking at a property, assuming that a purchase price of 150,000 and work down the forecasting as such. So as per usual, we've got the property purchase price, purchasing costs, refurbishment costs, all at the top of the sheet. So this property deal looks at a purchase price of about 150. Stamp duty is automatically added. So again, anything in a kind of selled out black selled out column, or bordered column, sorry, should I say, is automated for you. Anything else, you can tweak and amend the figures as such. So this particular property, let's assume we're buying it for 150, but maybe there's a sourcing fee, so maybe you're paying £3,000 in sourcing fees for the deal. Let's also assume the legals are about £1,000, no auction fees, surveyor's costs, maybe we're paying £350 for a survey, but there's no kind of main mortgage setup. Purchasing costs here are then automatically calculated, and refurbishment costs here are below are calculated. Now, 150 grand property could be spending £20,000 on refurbishment. That's certainly possible, but maybe it's a slightly larger refurbishment they want to do, or maybe slightly a higher end finish. It could be a completely run down property and we want to get it up to a really nice standard to sell to a homeowner. Let's say £30,000 budget. Project management fee, again, you can change here. Let's say you have a project manager in there 10%. If you put in 10% here, that will automatically add the cost in that column. And also refurbishment contingency. If you wanted to give yourself a 20% buffer, that will automatically add those figures in as well. So you've now got your total investment amount. This is made up here of your purchase price, your buying costs, and your refurbishment costs. As we scroll down the sheet, the next thing to consider is financing. Now, as we explained on the buy, refurbish and refinance model, ultimately buying, refurbishing and refinance, or buying, refurbishing and selling, is the same beginning process. You're buying a property, hopefully at a good value, you're adding value with a refurbishment, and then you're looking to either sell it on or refinance. That part or first stage of the process is going to be usually anywhere from sort of 3 to 12 months. I appreciate that's a relative spread, but it just gives you an idea from a timing perspective how long some of these projects can take. Now, it doesn't have to take years, certainly, to these projects. Very often they can be done within around 6 months. That's the average for most of our buy, refurbish and sell projects, especially if you're looking at mainstream residential houses. We've done them as quick as 4 months before. We've also typically taken as long as sort of 8 to 10 months sometimes before. But these projects, because they're shorter term timeframes, mainstream lending like buy-to-let lending is probably not going to be suitable for it. If you need buy-to-let finance, commercial finance, bridging finance, private finance, anything like that, let me know. We can put you in touch with those contacts. that'll help you raise funds for these projects. But primarily for buying, refurbishing and selling, you're probably going to be looking at shorter term finance, and it's possibly going to be more expensive than some of the other options out there for you. So we try and bake these figures really into our forecasting when we're looking to assess each of these deals. And that's really important because you don't want to be under analysing the deal in effect. You want to keep it simple, but you don't want to be missing out key costs of that project. So total finance here, as you can see, 192,000. So we're going to be assuming we're financing the full amount. Even if you're not, even if you're putting your money in the deal, you could be buying 100% cash, or you're putting 50% in, or 30% in, whatever it might be. It's still important to really assess the deal as if you're funding it 100%, because there is an opportunity cost. You could use that money that you're putting into the deal elsewhere, maybe at a different rate of return. So it's important to have that baked into the deal. So total finance, this column here is looking at months holding, or row should I say. This row here is looking at your finance rate per month. So 1% per month is probably typical for private finance. Bridging finance will vary. You might have some entry fees and exit fees, and it could be even less than 1% per month. So it could be 0.85, 0.7, 5, 0.9%, even 1.25. It depends upon the lender, depends upon the deal, depends upon the applicant. So we put in 1% there as a bit of a guide. It gives you a good average. 6-month projects, good average. And if we're assuming we're totally funding the whole deal, or certainly opportunity costs, we've got to consider that. Our total finance cost for this project is going to be about £11,000. That's made up here of the amount we're lending over the time frame and the rate we're paying. Hope that makes sense so far. So next we're going to be moving down to the stress calculation tests. So all of these here are pre-populated for you. The only thing that is variable is your resale fees. So if you're selling via a local estate agent, 1.5% is probably top end for most areas. Most local estate agents now are trying to compete with online estate agents, so they will typically be quite competitive on fees. Online estate agents would usually be less, but very often don't get you the same value when it comes to services provided, and then also total end sale price as well. So I still prefer to use local estate agents where we can. On that basis, even if you change this to say 1%, you can see how it impacts this resale fee column here. All of these then give us a total investment and also plus your financing cost, and then you can tweak the property sale price here to suit. So this property assumes, or this project case assumes £150,000 purchase, £30,000 refurbishment cost, and then all the other fees that go into it. If we're selling it for £230,000, we're making this sort of profit level and this sort of profit percentage. Now, as a general guide, we're trying to achieve around, as you can see here, 20% net profit per project in our kind of expected case or possible case scenarios. Now, with that in mind, for us personally, this particular project wouldn't come up to par. It wouldn't give us the right sort of rate of return. However, there are changes that you can make on that deal to see if it does work for you or not. Everybody's individual. Everybody will have their own criteria, and we can certainly give you kind of guides and rules of thumb, but it will vary. So London, for example, may have a different net profit target, certainly as a percentage, than other parts of the country. Primarily because it's more competitive, primarily because as a percentage it might be slightly lower, but the profit physical cash amount will be significantly higher because you're looking at higher value properties than, say, an area in Newcastle or an area in Leeds, Manchester, Birmingham, or most other parts of the country. So when it comes to kind of rules of thumbs and kind of guides, our profit margin target, although we try and target 20% in more competitive areas, so even in more competitive areas of the Northwest, we will try and target around 15% net profit. As long as we can do that project within quite a quick time frame. If it's going to be a 2-year project, then 15% net profit for the project obviously becomes less attractive when you compare that on a year-on-year basis. So you do need to take into account the length of time it takes to do the deal. You do need to take into account the type of deal, how much time it's going to take from you, how much effort, resources, how much money into the deal. All those things will play into whether you'll consider this deal as a longer term project. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of a guide and a little bit of context as to what sort of net profit margins you should be looking to achieve. So on this deal, this is why we have a expected case or possible case, worst case and best case scenario, because it allows us to play around with the different details of the deal. So for example, on this deal, if we were to sell it for maybe 240, 2.4 million would be nice, but let's say if it was 240, oops, we'd be looking at a net profit of about 16%. Now, all of a sudden, this deal starts to become in the realms of possibility for us. If we're looking ideally for 20% target, but we would consider 15% in a very good area. If we are confident we can get the deal to sell for about 240 or get it to an end value of about 240 to sell, then we would probably look at progressing this deal further on those basis. Especially if we could buy it for 150, especially if the refurb was competitive at 30 and we could get this potential end valuation. If you've got 250, significantly better. Starts to go up to the kind of the real juicy kind of ends of the net profits kind of scale, as you can kind of see. The other thing to consider is obviously the cost of funds that you're putting in this deal. If you're funding these projects 100% cash, you're not using any form of leverage, and you're not necessarily bothered about trying to wrap up an opportunity cost. So you just want to say, look, those funds are available. I'd only be getting kind of 1 or 2% in the bank, so I'm not worried about trying to say I should be achieving a certain amount of income just on the funds in use. You could strip out this finance element if you wanted to. Even by simply changing that percent figure to 0, you know your finance costs are then going to be 0. Your margin starts to increase significantly. So if you take this back down to 230, you can see that deal does actually work. It's over 18% net profit. That might be the right sort of level for you, for your area. And especially if you're funding the project fully for cash, you might be comfortable with saying, okay, well, I'm going to put 194,000 into the deal. And I'm also going to be selling it for about 230. So I'm going to be making about £35,000 profit. So for me, if it's a 6-month project, putting 230 in the deal, I'll make 35 grand. Could be very happy with that. Don't worry about the opportunity cost of the funds. So that's 2 important things to consider when you are looking at the deals. Your cost of finance, if you're going to add a cost of finance in there. Your margin that you want to achieve for your net profit. And then you can start to see how those deals work on a flip strategy, and how these deals could compare like for like. So you can use this sheet to assess different projects. When you then save those projects by putting the address in this top column, you can then start to see which properties, so number 1 High Street versus number 1 Arcadia Avenue, for example, or number 1 Bridge Street. Which property works best? I hope that helps. Any questions, as always, don't hesitate to ask. I look forward to catching up with you on the next video. Cheers.